Welcome, everybody, back here at Veil of Sound. No, it's not Sunday. You're seeing correctly. And no, it's not our normal video interview. It is one of my beloved. We do this every quarter kind of interviews with Dylan from Bellwitch, Percasian, and now with his next incarnation, J'ai et une autre, which translate into something like I is someone else or someone different. We will have to talk about that. When you are listening to that, it's only a few days away from the release of his debut record, Flatworm Mystices, if I have it correctly.
Mysticism.
Mysticism? Why did I write Mystices? I'm getting old.
Yeah, you got it.
And it's a fun thing. Dylan and I have already been talking about which will be the next interview, so be prepared. We're going to keep this thing rolling for like ever and ever. And one thing that I like about the new record is that it reminded me of one of my favorite American poets of all time, Charles Bukowski. And that is also one of the twists that I want to give to this interview. I remember one of the first poems that I've ever read by him is called Don't Come Round, But If You Do, where he basically tells everybody to get the fuck away from his property and never call again. And he also explains it by saying, well, babe, it's just, I'm not ready to talk to you. I'm not ready to love you. I'm not ready to hate you. I'm not ready to kill you. And now comes the thing that I connect with Flatworm Mysticisms. I have not shaven into new mirrors. That is what Bukowski is saying. Interpretation of that is, I think, pretty easy. He has not shaven, or he has not transformed into a new version of himself. Now, my first question to you, Dylan, is J'ai et une autre, is this a new project, a new mirror for you, or is it another part of you, another mosaic?
Mate, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I have a direct answer. So it came about, I mean, maybe a little bit of both. It came about by during the lockdowns of the pandemic, Bellwitch started doing a Patreon channel. And I think the idea was, let's do something. We're all going crazy. Let's have this avenue to do this thing. And the format was
That's when we started this thing here. Like, I totally get you.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of had to start something. And yeah, the idea was we take like a 5 to 10 minute clip of a film, ideally a powerful clip from a powerful film, and put music to it. And it started off like Jesse and I would be working on a Bellwitch section, and we would record it and to demo it. And we would just kind of take that recording and pair it onto a movie. And after a couple of those, that kind of became like an exercise of lining it up so things matched up, kind of like Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz. It's kind of like there's a couple spots where it's like, that's too weird. How did they? That's on purpose. It started off as an exercise like that, and I think as time went on, I started trying to write the songs to the clip. And then with that, it became less centered on the bass guitar, and maybe like it needed a little glue to go around the edges to fit everything together. So synthesizers, I had a couple synthesizers that I would just play with. All of a sudden, those became very important in the process. The next thing I know, it was like bass is almost a secondary instrument in this. The synthesizer is kind of the primary instrument. And then after, I don't know, it's been going on for 3 years now. After a while, it became where I'd like finish up one of those videos, and I was doing one every month. I would finish it and be like, I want to keep playing around with these synthesizers. Like, this is fun. And it kind of just became its own little like a split off entity, which is kind of where the idea of the album title came on, the flatworm mysticism, because a flatworm, if a flatworm is, worming around, there's a little bread tie here, and it gets cut in half, it's not the case where one half just dies and the other half can survive. Both halves can kind of become two different flatworms. So there's almost two entities that just split off of this one. And obviously they have the same genetic makeup because they were the same entity, but all of a sudden they're kind of going off as, I mean, like a doppelganger or a twin, another version of themselves. It's almost like the dimensions split in like some kind of quantum way, and there's two beings that are out
Yeah.
exploring the same world in the exact same. That's I don't know if that answers your question, but I think a little bit of both. It's kind of it is a split off in a different direction, but it is also kind of the same direction. Ilk might be a word. It's
Mhm.
of the same, coming from the same place, maybe. Yeah.
It's interesting. I would have answered it basically with the same answer. It's both. Because I think songwriting wise, it is similar to Bellwitch. Songwriting, not sound, songwriting. And at the same time, of course, it's based on a totally different instrument. So I think also it's both. And here I also want to go into that songwriting process a little bit. You've said, but at the beginning, you made the music and put or looked for a sequence to it, right? Now it's the other way around. So how does that then turn the songwriting process upside down when you first have a scene and then write to it?
Ah, yes, yes. Um, it is different. It's been a sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's like getting that initial thing down is weird, because I guess part of it is like what is the mood of the scene? Like, is this an aggressive scene? Is there violence happening? Is there sadness happening? Is there joy happening? What is it? And then how does that interpret into music? And then what is the base of that, or the basis of that? And sometimes I think I in a good movie, there's maybe the characters will be misleading, and like they're smiling, but actually, and the viewer will identify this, there's actually like a very sad thing happening, or a very
Mhm.
scary thing happening, or anything that's not what's being presented on the person's face, which I think we all do in the real world too. Um, and sometimes it's finding that to try to, explore that musically, which then I think kind of heightens the emotion in the whatever is happening in the movie, be it a character or a landscape or whatever it is, and it brings it out. And I when it's when it works, when it really hits, both the visual aspect and the soundtrack aspect heighten each other, and it becomes really, really big and powerful. Um, and I think that, yeah, obviously this record, there's no visual pairing, and I'm hoping to explore that more with the with whatever follows. Um, but yes, it is a different approach. Kind of like writing to something is an exercise that, it's a lot of fun. It's challenging.
We also should point out that what you are doing is not soundtracking, because a soundtrack is a commissioned piece of music
Sure.
that has been commissioned usually by a studio or by a director. So you just simply you still have free reign to do whatever you want to,
Oh,
whereas a
sure.
real soundtrack has to serve a much more concrete idea. However, the question is, of course, as you have now ventured into this very, very adjacent terrain, would you be up to do a soundtrack?
Oh yeah, that'd be wonderful. Yeah, that'd be absolutely wonderful. I would love to.
And do you now? I mean, like a lot of musicians that I know, and I'm very, very sure, including you, have thought about that before. Do you now feel a little more secure in your ability to do it? That you've done something very similar?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that was part of the initial approach to the Patreon channel as well. Like we had been talking at between Jesse and I and Bellish, we have been talking about trying to look in that direction of doing soundtracks. And part of the idea was, well, let's let's start practicing at it. Um and the Patreon thing kind of just ended up being the thing that I was doing. Um but uh but it very much has been that has been a something off on the horizon that it has been involved in the whole process. It's been an end goal of sorts, I suppose, or at least an important destination along the whatever the path of the goals are. I don't know if there's a goal. It's a point that would be nice to take a break at
Mm.
or to pass through.
Is it all is one part of the allure also to become much, much more acquainted with a new instrument, to step a little bit away from the bass, as you have already done with percussion, where you learned the guitar? So
Sure.
again, is that something where you say like, okay, I want to venture into new terrains?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has been fun learning. It's been challenging even. And in some regards, the guitar is so similar to bass. It's just kind of like a different approach to the same. Mm, it's like the difference in driving a stick versus automatic. It's like you're still driving a vehicle. It's
Yeah,
just like there's a slightly different method of how it's done. Whereas the
yeah,
synthesizer is, I mean,
a different
some,
vehicle.
yeah, yeah. In some regards, the keys are no different than the strings, but it's a different approach. It's different visually. The way you grab it is different. And with a synthesizer, the knobs are almost as important as the notes. And on a piano, obviously, the notes are everything.
Yeah,
But the on a synthesizer, the knobs can make everything wildly different from one, just a twist of one can just change everything.
yeah.
And that's fun. I mean, who doesn't like that?
People
It's
who like to keep
it
it simple and straight.
oh, yeah, something like that.
Ah,
I mean, it gives so much more versatility and there's so much more room for you know, you can go from one emotion to another so quickly, and that takes an understanding of the instrument that is, so in a lot of ways, it's much more complex. The way that approaching a bass or a guitar obviously is just as versatile. You can communicate anything in a change in lightning fast. You can do it, but I think that it's still going to be from the same instrument. Effects can be thrown on, of course, um, but with the synthesizer, and maybe there's a parallel with the effects that can be put onto a guitar or bass, or the knobs on a synthesizer, or the same effects being put on a synthesizer. But I feel like the instrument of a synthesizer is designed just to be so versatile and change so quick, lightning fast, which is really exciting and fun
And
work was.
yet there is a parallel in the structure of a music. The parallel is that your music is still highly based on repetition.
Sure, sure.
So this is the side that is not un autre, but it's still the same, right?
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's not a different version or it's not a different me. It's just me. It's my very own way of, or it's not mine, your very own way of writing music. It's repetitive in nature.
Sure, sure. I see what you mean. And the name is a I guess to elaborate on this, the
It's
name
Rimbaud,
is a
right?
yes, Rimbaud. Rimbaud. And it's kind of referencing like the idea of I as another. Like I think an example he gives when he said that in like in a letter, I think he was writing to a friend, he references like a violin, and it's kind
Mhm.
of the way that I think it could be interpreted in many ways. One of the ways that I think is easy to interpret it is like say we take a violin by itself, it can only do one thing, like or a bass guitar or a guitar or whatever. It can do one thing. The strings vibrate and noise comes out. But something different happens when a human grabs it and plays a series of notes together. There's this whole other expression that the violin itself couldn't have done. There's this other that comes in and gives the instrument its personality. Um, there's like
Also,
it's
it's
like
meaning, right?
yeah, it's meaning yeah. The two are symbiotic and they work together. Like in some regard, the hand of the person holding the instrument couldn't make those noises without the violin. So the hand has no, it doesn't have that method of communication. The violin likewise couldn't make those noises without the hand. And once the two come together, there's this thing, and it's like the eye is another. Like which one of those is there's the musician and there's the instrument, but they're 100% dependent on each other. And I think that can be applied to if we're just specifically looking at I don't know, the wide range of creative endeavors that humans do, be it biology, be it music, be it poetry, be it athleticism, whatever. Um, there's some element of that, and I think that we can find that in ourselves, even if we look at like, say, someone who's going to sing. Um, Obviously, that's coming from their own throat. They don't need an instrument to do that. They are the instrument. Um, I think that in that application, one could say, uh, like, what is it that's creating the song? What is it that's creating the where is that coming from? Is that coming from inside of ourselves? And if so, uh, where? Like, as you and I are talking right now, I couldn't just make a song. I don't even know how I would start that. But if I had a piano in front of me, it's like something would kind of just come to me and I could start making noise on it. And there's like it kind of implies this sort of part of a human being exist. I don't know. Uh, Something in our maybe in like in the subconscious or something inside of us that is maybe even interconnected um with other humans, with through our culture, through our genetics, through our the shared history that all people have coming from whatever our biological ancestors were and other apes. um there's some driving force in there that maybe is still expressing itself. And I think that could be considered an other just as much as the hand and the violin could be considered an other, which is yeah, I think Rimbaud was trying to get that across when he was saying that.
I also thought about that quote that was presented to us as reviewers through the promo material. When I looked at it and thought about it, I thought like, okay, it is basically talking about the interdependence of things with humans, humans and humans, humans and animals, however you want to talk it. Like we're always interdependent on something. Also, because of course we as humans are uh, we are in a way depending on the other to define who we are. Even if we are introverts and eremites and hermits and try to move away, there is still the notion that we move away from someone. So we couldn't move away without somebody else to whom we want to distance ourselves. So there's always an interdependence.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, like Rimbaud, of course, did not have that idea, but would you say that the I in that context is also always a social construct?
Yeah, I think it would be unavoidable. Because like you said, we are always dependent. Like we come from other biological creatures, like our parents that created us. We're 100% dependent on them to at least get going, probably to nurture us for some, period of time. Um, and maybe other creatures are different in some ways, but not in others because how does we can't eat without other creatures to some effect, be it grass we're eating or be it I don't know, people that we're eating, whatever it is we're eating, it's something, some other life form in some
Yeah,
way, shape, or form.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that it is definitely dependent on a social aspect. And
But
to take away that social aspect, like if we're just kind of exploring that idea, is interesting to think about. And I can't think of any examples. Even a solar system would be dependent on something else. Likewise,
because
a
it's bordering on
galaxy.
something else.
Yeah, yeah. Like without the sun, there's no point in the planet that we're on or any of the other planets in the solar
Yeah,
system being in the
yeah. The moon needs
rotation.
the Earth as the centripetal point. Yes, of course. Um,
Yeah, and then if there's even a black hole at the center of our galaxy, which I understand that there is, the galaxy
yeah.
or our solar system circle around the galaxy, like, and who knows what's larger than that? But probably something that mirrors that same system, just in some regard.
Yeah. Then, of course, the question is, and I think that might also be applicable to the record in a way. Um, it's a question of like social construct versus self-perception. How important in that context is my own self-perception versus the artist who does it? While
Sorry,
Dylan is thinking about it, we come here to the point where I see like Dylan and I have been talking so much over the last 12 months, so that this is getting deeper and deeper. And so at some point, we will find the answer to everything.
everything,
And now you're on.
everything. No doubt. No doubt. We've gotten close already. I was following you for a minute and I lost it.
The question
Sorry to
is,
make you.
what is more important, the social construct or my own self-perception
Mm,
in
yeah,
that
I guess
context?
it's hard to separate the two really because I think our contact would really come from the social construct. Like
Mm.
I I read this book recently which I think is getting a lot of press in the US called Determined, or the author's name. It was amazing, and it's about he's a neuroscientist who is looking to prove that there's no such thing as free will,
Mm.
that our entire existence is based off of a determined system. And I don't think he's trying to say that we all have a fate that we're going to end up, our fate is to do this thing. But maybe more of the context of based off of where we're coming from, like based off where we're born in the world, what the economic situation is, how race plays into it, how gender plays into it. We're all kind of coming out of the womb with a set of, you know, depending on where we're born, we're going to have a different life is going to approach us differently, or we're just unable to approach life different the same way as another. So like, however that is, um, it's kind of determined for us from that moment based off of how we're born. If we have a lot of money, things are going to be different than if we don't have money. And our experience is going to be shaped by that as we go through it. And then based off of those experiences, the way we handle things in the future will be shaped off of it. So in so many ways, I think that mm, I'm maybe veering away from your question, but I think that I'm on track.
I can lead you back because I think you're totally right. And to take the example of being rich, by the way, the guy is called Sapolsky, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's it.
And the example was to be rich. Of course, being rich is a huge difference to being poor, but being rich in Germany is something different than being rich in the States.
Sure.
So the whole predetermined thing of us as individuals can be to a certain part thrown away because we and our life is predetermined. I mean, like, only by looking at my daughter. The son, not the son, the daughter of two academics. That is a totally different point than where I come from, being the son of a craftsman, of a baker, and his wife. So that is something totally different. So we are determined, definitely, but isn't there also still that little twist of us dealing with that? How do we take the predetermined things and twist them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like we're given a template and we're told what to do with. But I think the determinism comes from the template. Um, like as you said, like being rich in Germany is different from being rich in the United States. But those are just two different templates, really. Like being rich in the United States might mean your first car is a airplane or something
It's not the
ridiculous.
Prius.
Yeah, as we do over here. Um, and like, I mean, I think his point isn't necessarily that it's impossible to ever have a choice, but that the choices we have the choices we all have in life are within a framework that is unique per person, and we're not really able to step outside of that framework. Like my first car was never going to be an airplane.
Damn.
No, I wouldn't want it to be an airplane. But I did have a first car,
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a part of the world where that's gonna a thing that's going to happen for me eventually. Um, and it's et cetera, et cetera. Like there is some sort of choice within what my first car was going to be. But that choice was more limited for me than it was for
Yeah.
the person whose first car was a rocket ship.
Yeah. And it's I think the I that comes into the game here is the choice of a car. Let's imagine mommy and daddy giving you a choice of 3 different cars. Then of course that choice or that selection is a predetermined thing, yes, by mom and dad, but you still have a choice out of 3 different ones, of course. So in that context, for J'ai et Autre, your choice was the synthesizer instead of, for example, a theremin or a saxophone.
Sure, sure, sure. And I think that I like this now because I think that when you were talking about how it seems like maybe the composition or the mood is parallel with that of Belwich, and I very much agree. And I think that that there's I don't know, I'm liking that comparison because I think that both are being approached with the kind of the same thing in mind. And what I'm approaching is it's very much with the Bell Witch theme in mind because I think that it
Mhm.
came directly off of that, whereas I was approaching it with, I was in Bell Witch writing mode, and this thing just kind of came off the side, and it sort of just split off. It just it's very much of the same place.
Yeah, because in that context, you are the template.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then again, it will be interesting how that template, aka you, will approach another record for this project.
Sure.
Will
Yeah.
be totally different.
Yeah.
What I like about this context is also, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there is also something in there which gives the audience an important role. Because whatever we hear, made by you, so you giving us music, that is what we all get, but we all perceive it differently. We all bring us into the game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then it can mean something different, you know, like if we were talking about earlier about listening to music while doing, things around the house. Like sometimes I'll put a record on while I'm cooking.
That's
Um,
always happening here.
yeah, yeah. And like, the music I listen to when I go running in the morning makes me feel a certain way, whereas that same record that I'm listening to later when I'm I don't know, painting a wall or something that doesn't have any that's not encouraging blood flow, it just feels different, and it's like
Yeah.
I approach it and it means something different to me in that moment, and it's or if I'm just sitting down with the lights off listening to music trying to really focus in on it,
Yeah,
that's a very different approach also, and it and I think that could go to some extent, that's probably similar for everyone, but the template that the people are showing up to listen to it with is different for everyone
yeah,
too, which is, kind of the fun part about just art in general.
definitely. Definitely.
And I feel like when I say fun, that almost is kind of diminutive. That's the beauty of art in general, really.
Yeah.
That's the part of all of our heart and souls that attract us to it, I think.
Quick and easy question in between to let us get at least for a second away from the deep talk. What was the last record that you had on when you were cooking?
Uh, um,
Must have
my
been a
girlfriend
long
and I have
time
been
ago when
listening.
it's so hard to remember, my friend.
I I think her name is Callie Malone, an
Oh yeah,
organ she plays the organ,
yeah,
it's very minimal. My girlfriend and I have been listening to that. We listened to it last night when we were cooking, and it's great. It's
it is
fucking
great.
great. It's like
Yeah,
droning organ, and it's kinda like you start to hear these overtones creep out, and it makes every little thing like, when we're cooking, maybe we'll be quiet, and we won't say much, but it just makes uh every little activity. Cutting an onion is done with laser focus and meaning.
yeah. For everybody who might not be familiar with the name, it's Kali, and then Malone, like the basketball player or whoever you want to think of. If you still want to find out more, you can also find a review of her. I think it was not the latest, but the second latest record that she put out last year here on the Veil of Sound, on our website. So if you want to get to know a little bit more about that, there you are. For everybody who wants to know what was the last thing that I listened to today while cooking, it's very easy. It's J'ai et un autre, because I had to prepare for this interview. And I had already listened to the record before, but there is something to that. There is a certain innuendo that you can give to, for example, something simple as cooking by changing the record. And yes, I think that is definitely the beauty of art. What I also like about this whole idea of, getting the templates together and throwing different situations around and shifting perspectives is that, in a way, this is, and here I can also come back to the beginning. It shows a very different side of you, because if I remember correctly, one part of the initial point of this record was that you tried to put sound to things or movies that influenced you or that you simply like. Now the question is, did you use movies from a certain genre, or are they also all over the place?
I think that a lot of them end up being in a certain genre. I've been trying to branch out and use different ones lately, but so yes, that's a very good point. A lot of the movies are of a very similar genre, maybe like slow moving, maybe kind of, I mean, I don't know. I like to think they feel like they're thought provoking to me. Like I like joked in I've never talked about this out loud, but I joke in my head about how if I could really just go through Tarkovsky's catalog and just make videos to like little clips, because every little clip in a Tarkovsky movie is perfect for writing a song to it. And every little clip might be a little different, but within the idea of that template, they might not be that different of songs. They would all definitely fit in the for the most part, they would all fit in the same, they'd be on the same album, so to say, or from the same, you know, coming from the same place. Uh,
And
so yeah, I guess
interestingly still, the same record with basically the same song done over and over again would receive very, very different reviews, very, very different reactions.
definitely,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. Like AC/DC has been putting the same record out for decades,
Yeah.
and I am going to be the first to say that I think that old stuff is unstoppable. For some reason, I think the new stuff is different. It doesn't hit me the same way, but it's probably the same damn shit.
It is. It is. Funnily, I just saw today that they're coming on tour again, and I think the cheapest ticket is something like 150 euro.
Whew. Well, we all got bills to pay, I suppose.
I have to be silent. For transparency's sake, I can say this right now because the wife is asleep, and it's
Yeah.
February 12th. And as for the interview will come out later, she will already know what she will get for Valentine, and she'll get a present for Valentine and for our 10-year anniversary this year, and she'll get it all in one because it's a big thing. So I brought us, all three of us, tickets to see Billy Joel in Cardiff this year.
Oh, that'll be
Cardiff. Shit, awesome. Those tickets were expensive.
Oh, I bet. Not to mention the lodging and the flights and the.
Oh, there will come more. There will come more. I cannot disclaim more here because maybe she'll listen to it and then she'll know what my plans are. I'll tell you later. But the tickets for that concert were that was the most expensive thing that I ever bought for a concert.
Well, hey, I mean that'll be awesome. That'll be worth it.
Definitely. definitely. And it's also a fun thing. It's the concert will take place exactly 1 week after our 10-year anniversary, so that also makes it a lot special.
Perfect. Getting two birds stoned, as they say.
Yes, yes. In German, we have a similar saying, but it's different. It's like zwei Fliegen mit einer Klappe. It's like two flies with a fly swatter.
There you go. Yeah.
When we come back to what Bukowski said, like shaving into new mirrors, reinventing yourself. Is it the way that doing these projects, Percasian, Autre, also writing notes for records that you've done last year for that record by James Romick and Mike Scheid. So very different things. Is that, I mean, first of all, it's important for you, clearly. But is that also important for Bellwitch in a way?
I think so. I do. I think so for sure. I don't know if anyone outside of myself, or maybe outside of Jesse, the drummer in Bellwitch, maybe less so as that gets away from the core of the issue. But I think for me, I think Bellwitch is definitely the prime project. I've been working on it since 2010. I mean, arguably since before that. But yeah, I think all the other projects I've been doing do have some sort of revolution around Bellwitch. Like there's a black metal project I'm working on right now that we've got this running joke that whenever we get like just a little bit done, I go on tour again. It's like, well, I'll get to it in a month. There's this death metal project that I've been working on with some buddies. We've been working on it since 2017, and we've got a couple demos that we recorded, but we never put it out. And everyone in the band has another band that, like, to what Bellwitch is to me, they all have another band that is similar to them. So like one of them will be on tour, then like they get home, like, well, damn, I'm leaving, or I'm focused on writing for this other project, and like 6 months will go by where we don't even practice because there's just no time to physically be in the same room to do it. So in so many ways, I think that being one example, Bellwitch is definitely the core, and I think that all the other projects are kind of in some ways of it. Some of the other projects, I'm like, there's a band called Serpentant that I played bass in, and I'm merely adding to something that she has written. So it's very different in that regard, but I think that my template is so shaped by Bellwitch that I think I approach it with those textures just built in, just in some regard, that's just how I, it's almost like that's how I know to speak, or that's how I know to, you know, that's the template I'm working with, basically.
I was also thinking about it from a different point of view. We both know certain bands, certain records, certain projects that have had a awesome character until there is this one point where one of the band members says, oh, we have to refresh it. We have to include something else to keep it cool. Very often those experiments turn out to be the lesser quality, like they don't have the same core that the project had before. Is that also for you? Like, okay, you have a band in which you play the guitar, you have this synth-driven project, and then all of that is like the playground for you to do whatever you want, and at the same time then Bellwitch is this one thing that will always have its own identity, and you don't have to bring in more stuff. Is that something that is important? Like Bellwitch is Bellwitch?
Yeah. Yeah. Bellwitch is, yeah, I know what you mean. And I think that is important. Like, I think like it, some bands do that. Like they have you know, there's a style that they have, and then all of a sudden a new record comes out and it's like a completely different band or a very different version of, and sometimes it's between two records you can hear the difference. Trying to think of something off the top of my head. I don't even know. I mean, like I guess I wouldn't say that between like And Justice for All and the Black Album. That's obviously still the same band, but they are very different albums, and it's
Yeah.
a very
One is good music and the other is for Black Album.
yeah, like obviously they quit taking songs that were written by Dave Mustaine at a certain point, and the band changed. Just kidding. Um, yeah, there's obviously uh, more examples of that sort of thing out there in the world that are probably a lot more dramatic.
If, by the way, if we want to stick to Metallica, a better example would be if we take it one step further. If we take Injustice for All, a Black Album, and then Load, which has like, which is all over the place.
Yeah, there's a big jump. And like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess in my mind, those are three different projects. Like, and there's no shame in saying, let's just make that a different band. Let's give it a new name. Maybe it should have a name that references the other band. And that's how I would do it, at least, because it's of that other band. Like, it's kind of like the template is being transferred over this other direction, but it's very much still the same, very much a different project. And I mean, I don't know, they can do it however they want to do it. Obviously, their kids are probably driving jet planes as their first car, and that's good for them. That's all just good and fine, I guess. But
But you
yeah,
want to keep Bellwitch.
yeah, I think that project means the world to me, and it I've been able to explore things with that I haven't been able to in other areas of life, and that's important to me. And I think that it needs to just keep growing in the same direction it's been going. And to some extent, I feel like that direction it kind of has its own direction. In some ways, I feel like I'm um, merely delivering or putting things together that already were determined in so many ways. Like maybe it is the car, and maybe I'm uh, a driver of sorts, but there's only four wheels on the car. It can't fly away. It can't grow legs and walk. It can't, there's only so many things it can do. And I want to make sure that it does exactly those things. And yeah.
I have one last question before we come to the infamous quickfire round. And that is, I mean, like, of course, it's clear that you love movies. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this.
Sure.
Would you say, because that's something that I haven't gotten an answer to by now, and maybe that is something that you can answer. Do you think that movies, as another form of art, are also able to provide us, as the audience, with a external look into us ourselves?
Um, I think a really good movie does. Yeah. Like a Hollywood movie that's centered around explosions and catching the bad guy. Maybe there is a glimpse into ourselves of that, but I think a lot of what they're doing is kind of trying to maybe just dilute the workday. Like I think a lot of those movies are designed to uh detach from one's own life and one's own experience, whereas other movies are designed maybe to enrich and to focus on one's own experience. And I was talking about Tarkovsky earlier. I think he's a great example of any of those movies are um, there's definitely a detachment. It's another world, but it's another world where I think we're able to kind of like as the viewer, if we're able to take a step away and go into whatever that world is, we're kind of looking back at ourselves, which is important. It's a sort of a mirror of sorts. Whereas like you know, Fast and the Furious, or which I've never even seen, so I shouldn't even use that as an example. But something of that kind where there's just like, cars blowing up and flying everywhere and guns going off and everyone's angry and tough and beautiful. Um, that's maybe different. There's a different thing trying to be that's a different realm of human experience, which I would argue is not meant to enrich, but just to um distract, maybe.
I know what you mean, and I would say that there are certain Hollywood action movies that can make you think.
Sure, sure,
But I also think that very often this ability is lost in um, all of the explosions. For example, I still think that um, in the last Avengers movie, I still think that there is this moment where people should sit down and think about the question whether it is not a good thing, in a way, to take away half of mankind.
mm,
But
mm.
it's all lost on the explosions. Or, there are many other movies. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And I
This
can
is the
also see
Thanos
that.
character, right?
Yeah. Thanos, who
Yeah,
with a snip of his finger on the Infinity Gauntlet is able to wipe away half of the existence on every planet anywhere. Which, of course, also has its moral points. Let's imagine
yeah,
what do you do to a species that maybe only has like five representatives, and all of a
sure.
sudden, boom, you take away half of it,
Yeah,
or maybe three. But I think that there are many moments where one can learn something from Hollywood movies if they took the time, and that's also a
sure.
case in the Avengers movie. It just doesn't take enough time for that question. Um,
Big
but I know
question.
what you mean. There are many independent movies who do that in a much better way than Hollywood productions. It is already nearly an hour again, my friend. It's so fast. I always like that when we talk. But of course, again, you don't get around for quick fire questions. And I again sat down and listened to our stuff, so nothing will be the second time around. Um, I have a few movie questions and I have a few music questions.
Cool.
Um,
I love these.
let's let's start with the music thing first. Um, when listening to the record, I had yeah, sometimes it reminded me of German krautrock. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. There's like the synth thing that yeah.
Sure.
And so the question first would be Neu versus Harmonia. Which Rover project? Neu versus Harmonia.
I don't have an answer. I'm not familiar.
Well, I'm very sure you know the next band. Can.
Can.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But
You
like, I
get two
think
records. You get two records by Can. Tago Mago versus Ege Bamyazi.
the first one,
Mm-hmm.
Tago Yazo.
Would have thought. So. of course, the music for J'ai et un autre is like synth driven and ambient and stuff. So the first one that should come to mind is always William Basinski, at least to me. No, the second one. We'll come to the first one in a moment, but the second one is Basinski. And then the question for me would be like, which record do you prefer, the disintegration loops or music for abandoned airports?
Probably disintegration loops,
Mm-hmm.
but that's no slight against music for abandoned airports
Yeah,
because both of them are. I mean, everything he's done is brilliant, really.
yeah, definitely.
And that record that I pulled out earlier when we were talking is a Basinski record.
Yeah. And the first one that comes to mind when talking about ambient is probably Brian Eno. At least he should be.
Oh yeah, love Brian Eno. Uh, at the beginning of the last Bellwitch tour in Europe, we started off in Prague at Brutal Assault, and we were there a couple days earlier, and we went to a museum which had an exhibit with a Brian Eno score that was being played in every room.
Ooh.
And you kind of just like walk through all these rooms and they're empty. I mean, it's a museum, so the ceilings were really tall. Uh, like the strange sculpting along the edges of the ceiling. Everything is just beautiful, but the walls are just bare. And there's this like droning note, and there's like kind of like harmonics getting introduced slowly. And it was like it became really eerie, and everybody was kind of just walking through and looking at each other like, but we all know we're supposed to be have our artistic thought-provoking faces on, so we're kind of like, oh yeah, I know. So there's that air going on too. There's the pretension, and then finally there's the big room where the main exhibit is. It's they've got like it's a sort of a tent that was just a room within a room that just went up, and at the top of the tent it kind of curved out and connected to the ceiling. So it was almost like a square tube coming out of the ceiling, and it was lit from behind, so it was glowing. And there was obviously like a stereo of some sorts inside, and it was just droning. And the way the harmonics were going, it started to sound like somebody was shrieking, like and it
Yeah.
was fucking terrifying. And it was so many things. It was so cool, and everyone was just kind of standing there, just like, this is so awesome. I had to tell that story. That was so cool.
That's cool.
Brian,
With Eno, again, of course, two records to choose from. Before and after science or music or ambient music for airports.
Ambient music for airports is a classic. I love that. But I don't think there's anything he's done that like Basinski. It's all wonderful.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, as I said, we started this in the pandemic. So Velo sound is a pandemic thing, right? And I never listened a lot to Brian Eno. I had him categorized as, okay, one half of Roxy Music. I didn't like Roxy Music. You don't have to listen to Eno. And there were so many people throughout those 3 years by now that have been talking about Eno. So I still remember beginning of last year, 2023, I decided, okay, so many people talk about the guy, let's give it a chance. And I started listening, and I was basically like mentally slapping my face for like, you little,
It is magical. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's interesting. I mean, like, those are records that are 40 years old,
Yeah.
more than 40 years old. And there has not been anything similarly brilliant. That's strange. Last music question, my friend. When we talk about ambience, we're very, very close to drone. And when we talk about drone, the first ones to do it, at least in my opinion, were Earth, Dylan Carlson and his guys.
Sure.
So you get 2 albums, special low frequency version versus Hex.
I mean, I think the classic stuff, of course. I mean, if we're looking at the classic stuff, I would take Hex. Hex is wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Although, of course, like stuff like special low frequency version or Pentastar, you cannot deny the importance of those records. But Hex is just simply an all around awesome record. I love that one.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And like I was just talking with somebody about that Neil Young did that soundtrack for that movie, Dead Man.
Deadman. Yeah,
Yeah. And the soundtrack is just fucking incredible. It's just
it
him
is.
more or less just droning on a Fender Twin with the
Yeah,
guitar, with tremolo and the reverb's cranked and the whole it's just like in so many ways it's like stupidly simple and in so many ways it's incredibly complex and fucking great. And I think that a lot of that the later Earth stuff, or there was that era at least where it was directly referencing that soundtrack, and there's like that country feel to it, which is
exactly. This
so
kind of
cool.
dark folk slash
Yeah.
Americana slash, yeah, definitely, definitely.
And it's so cool, and like
Yeah.
that stuff's great.
And you also there see like how important the tuning of a guitar is. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah, when it's slightly off, there's this modulation that happens
Yeah,
that can be
yeah.
rather beautiful.
Although I'm not sure, I mean, like, no, I am pretty sure that Neil Young has never listened to an Earth album. But if he did, I wouldn't be surprised if that stuff kind of influenced him because, of course, like special low frequency
Wow.
version and Pentastar are or were released before the Dead Man soundtrack. So,
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean that's a very good fucking point. I hadn't even thought about that. Like obviously that could be a thing.
yeah. One question that is only a question for the audience because I know the answer. I can see the answer. Books. Real books like hardcovers or pocketbooks, however, or e-readers. What is more important for you, like the ebook or the hardcover?
Ah, hardcover.
Yeah.
Although, if I mean sometimes when you're traveling around, it sucks to carry around
Yeah,
huge heavy books. So a Kindle is, I mean, those things are convenient. They're nice to
definitely,
have.
definitely. And now we come to movies. I'll give you two of my favorite directors, not Tarkovsky, because I think giving you Tarkovsky is like making you choose between cancer and lepra, like both too good to take.
Sure, sure.
My favorite all-time movie maker is and will always be Martin Scorsese. I don't know why. I just like the guy.
Sure.
Uh Mean
Great.
Streets versus Taxi Driver.
Oh, um, I haven't seen either one in a very long time. I think Taxi Driver always stuck out more to me. It's just fucking insane. Um, and maybe there's something very American about that is really well captured, just in the angst and the confusion and the
Insanity.
insanity. Yeah, like yeah, that's a great movie. No slight against Mean Streets though. Yeah, I mean they're all good. Martin Scorsese's fantastic.
Although I have to admit that what was the last thing that he did for Netflix? The Irishman,
Oh, I never
something like
saw
that.
that.
That was like where I said, like, okay, dude, now it's becoming a little bit too obvious, like it's like the Irish mob, and it like okay, another 3-hour mafia movie. Okay, we've seen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Some director that I think is a little overlooked over the last couple of years. I don't know why, but I think he's amazing, or he was amazing, and he's done a lot for like how we make movies and how movies are also perceived. Alfred Hitchcock.
oh yeah, yeah.
Psycho versus Rear Window.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever seen Rear Window.
What?
I need to, obviously.
I've seen every Hitchcock.
I mean, they're all
I
great.
I had to for university. We had like film class, and we watched every Hitchcock movie.
And I mean, they're great. They're like the build up, the tension that he
Yeah,
puts in there is just fucking great. It's terrifying.
yeah, yeah.
Without ever, like, it doesn't rely on you know, it doesn't rely on blood in the way that it's not hyperbolic in that regard.
No.
They're great.
Okay, if you haven't seen Rear Window, then how about Psycho versus the Birds?
Um, the birds. I think there's a
Really?
unnerving quality to that where I don't know, the idea of the birds being I mean, anyone's that has experienced a lot of birds, they don't feel threatening. Like, if you're walking around in the world, a flock of small birds is not threatening.
Yeah,
But to take something that's so innocent and like not threatening and to put the idea of what if all of those things wanted to kill me or hurt me or whatever, like what if that was a threat? That's fucking scary.
it is. And the Birds, in a way, is very close to an experience that I had in my life. Um, I think it was like 13, 14 years ago. I visited Sarajevo in Bosnia Herzegovina. And there is this place, a little offside the old town, which has a beautiful market space and a wonderful wooden thing in the middle. I loved it, and there are literally like hundreds, maybe 3, 4, 500 pigeons. And I was walking there, and my friend who I visited hadn't told me about it, and he was carrying a little bag with him with corn. And I was thinking, like, why the heck are you carrying corn around? So we go to that marketplace, and the asshole takes out the bag and basically pours it over me. And what happens?
Ah, yeah, yeah. You're being assaulted by birds.
I mean, like that was a cool experience in a way, and I didn't have any scratch on my body. They were obviously it had happened to other people before, but at the first moment, I
He
was
got
like,
the idea somewhere.
what?
He got the idea somewhere.
Yeah,
Someone probably did it
sure,
to him, or he saw it done. He was like, ah,
of
that's a
course.
good idea.
That was an experience where I was like, okay, this is like the Birds, and I
Yeah,
was scared.
yeah. I mean, that's scary.
It is. It is. Definitely is. And although I have to say, if I had to choose between Psycho and the Birds, it would always be Psycho. One of them. I love that movie. I think the remake that they did in the '90s was what like the other shit, but like the original is to me unbeatable. I mean, not only the bathtub scene, but the whole thing when he plays with light and all of that.
Yeah, I mean
It's
that
just an
stuff is,
amazing movie.
and just the craziness of him and like the weird like kind of sociopathic sort of he doesn't seem that scary at first, and you slowly kind of like, wait, this guy's off. Something's wrong about him. Like that, the character study is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, and still the question like is he predator or is he victim?
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of like it gets into that of we were talking about determined. Like what his past is obviously very troubled, and if we look at him as a victim, it's like, well, of course he was going to do something fucked up like that because he had no choice in his life to do anything other than that. That the
Exactly.
situation that he was presented with put him in in that horrible position, which is yeah, which is a big thing we could turn and look at the especially the American criminal justice system. But yeah,
And the way that he had to keep up the template.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So, everybody out there, you have now been listening to us for nearly 70 minutes. First of all, congratulations for making it this far. But it is always a pleasure to talk with Dylan, and I always love to do that. I'm already looking forward to the next one. It will be a couple of months, but I'm very sure you'll get a second one in 2024. Dylan, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the patience. Thanks for the cool answers. And yeah, I don't say hope to talk soon because that will happen. So
It'll happen.
till the next time, my friend.
Indeed, indeed. Take care. Thank you for having me.
As always, it's my pleasure.
Likewise, I always like talking to you also.
Okay, bye bye.